be with you.
And your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus came to the district of Judea and the far side of the Jordan, and again crowds gathered round him, and again he taught them as his custom was. Some Pharisees approached him and asked, "Is it against the law for a man to divorce his wife?" They were testing him. He answered them, "What did Moses command you?" "Moses allowed us," they said, "to draw up a writ of dismissal and so to divorce." Then Jesus said to them, "It was because you were so unteachable that he wrote this commandment for you. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. This is why a man must leave father and mother, and the two become one body. They are no longer two, therefore, but one body. So then, what God has united, man must not divide." Back in the house, the disciples questioned him again about this, and he said to them, "The man who divorces his wife and marries another is guilty of adultery against her. And if a woman divorces her husband and marries another, she is guilty of adultery too." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
King Henry VIII was the King of England in the 16th century and was married to Catherine. He fell in love with a lady named Anne, and he wanted to divorce Catherine, and he approached Rome and he made an application for divorce. Rome very carefully went through his marriage and found that he has a legally wedded wife, and so Rome rejected his application. When his application was rejected, King Henry rejected the authority of Rome, and he declared himself protector and the head of the Church of England. He married Anne, he divorced Catherine. King Henry was responsible for the death of two saints, Saint John Fisher and Saint Thomas More. Later on, he divorced Anne and married 8 times. Lucky man. My dear friends, in the Gospel of today, Jesus forbids divorce, and Jesus says it is unlawful. Unlawful. The Pharisees are questioning Jesus. Why are they questioning? Not to seek information or knowledge. They are questioning him to trap him. Why? Because Jesus is going around teaching and preaching, and is attracting a lot of people. He is giving them grace and consolation. And so the Pharisees and the other leaders, they are threatened. They are threatened that everybody is following Jesus and they are losing a hold, a grip on them. And so they are losing customers. They may have to shut the shop very soon. And so they want to trap Jesus and pin him, nail him down. My dear friends, Jesus vehemently denies, opposes divorce. In the Old Testament, during the time of Moses, divorce was very rampant. Very rampant. Whimsically, whims and fancies of men, they would just divorce people. What does the book of Deuteronomy tells us? On what grounds was divorce allowed? Divorce was allowed on the grounds of uncleanness. Uncleanness. So what was this uncleanness? You have a sore, or you have some illness, and most scripture scholars said that this uncleanness could be bad breath. So women, brush your teeth well. Okay? This is bad breath, and that was the grounds for divorce. And adultery was not the ground for divorce. What was the Moses Lord said about adultery? That people would be stoned to death. So a little less of adultery was uncleanness, and because of this uncleanness, people would just divorce right, left and center. And so Jesus goes back to the creation story, and he narrates about Adam and Eve, and he says how Eve was created from the intimate part, the rib of Adam, and therefore a marriage is an intimate and an inseparable union, never to be divorced. A marriage is a covenant that is made forever, which is never broken. When does the covenant come to an end? When does the covenant come to an end? Only at the death of the spouse does this covenant come to an end. A marriage is a sacred, supreme covenant made by spouses together in the presence of the minister and the community. My dear friends, God delights in marriages. There was this golden wedding, and so one of the persons asked John, what do you have to say today? You are celebrating golden wedding. He said, nothing much, but 50 years of my life were very beautiful with Grace. And so Grace was asked, what do you have to say? And Grace said, nothing much. I had 50 golden years with my husband John. And someone asked her, in these 15 years, have you ever contemplated divorce? She said, divorce? Never. Murder several times. My dear friends, marriage is not easy. Marriage is difficult. You are married on that day, but marriage is for lifetime. Every day basis you love the person. Sometimes I wonder it is so difficult for people when they come to us and say, Father, we want to marry. You got to live with the same person. You got to put up with the same person on an everyday basis. What a wonderful decision. Sometimes a decision could be frightening. It could be frightening for some. And some of them feel that they're in a cage. Now that they're married, they're finding ways and means to come out. How sad. My heart breaks when young couples come to us and they tell us, Father, we want to be separate. We want divorce, we want annulment. What has happened? You are courting with each other for 7 years and 8 years. And just in a few months or a year, coming back to us and telling us that we want to separate. Where was that love gone? Where's that love gone? And some of us so vehemently, boldly tell us, Father, there is no love. Where is that love gone? Was it just a cruel joke, a bad dream? Now that you've come back to the church and asking for an annulment, we ask ourselves, what have we done with our marriages? We ask our married couples, where have they gone wrong? Some of them are living separately. Husband is somewhere else, wife is somewhere else, children are somewhere else, and then they tell us we have moved on. What is this moved on? From where has this come in our church? From where is this culture coming in? Marriage has become frightening for young couples. A young girl once told me, I don't want to get married. I look at my parents and I don't want to get married because I was also doing the same thing. She's judging, she's generalizing, she's worried about marriage. It's an age for her to get married, but she doesn't want to get married. My dear friends, it is said that marriage is difficult because you fall in love with the personality and you have to live with the character. It's very true. You fall in love with the personality, but then you realize that you got to live with the character all throughout life. And so, all those young people who are there, believe in marriage. Believe in marriage. Do not be afraid or scared of marriages. Build your marriage. You are building a house on an everyday basis. The foundation of every marriage is prayer. Come together as couples before the Lord on an everyday basis. Surrender your life to God. Pray for each other. We have this famous marriage counselor, Jeffrey Chapman, who gives us 5 tips about marriage, how to sustain marriages. The first point that he says is words of affirmation. I'm sure as young couples they have names for each other. They have names as Chubby and Bubbly, Jan, whatever it is. And after a few months or years of marriage, these names which brought joy and so much of joy and love for one another, these names are forgotten. Words of affirmation. Actions not necessarily always speak louder than words. We must hear those words of affinity, those words which bring joy to us. Where are all those who are married, please stand. All those who are married, please stand. Okay, words of affirmation. I want to ask you, when was the last time you called your spouse with that very special name? Do you still call your spouse with that name or have you forgotten? Make time. Make it as a priority. Don't say I am old now. You are never old. You are always that person to your spouse. You are never old. Never deny marital right to your spouses. Never deny marital right to your spouses and say I am young and today he is grown old. Will you appreciate if your spouse goes to a massage parlor or visits a brothel or a prostitute? You will never appreciate that. Never deny marital rights to your spouses. Call your spouses by that very special name that you used to call him. Have you forgotten or you remember? You remember? Call it on an everyday basis. That's how you spice up your marriage. That's how you spice up. I ask young couples, for the first few months they are on cloud nine. Why? Because we all know. But after a year, what happens? How do you spice up your marriage? These are simple things, common things, simple things that matter much. So spice up your marriage. Words of affirmation. We hear this ringtone, you're my something, something. What happened to that? Sing it to your spouse. You're my honey bunny. Tell your spouse that you are my honey bunny. You are that something, something for me. Because of you, my word goes around. Have you forgotten that? Or you just take your spouse for granted? Familiarity breeds contempt. Yes or no? We have become too familiar with one another. We have become too familiar. Or do we love one another? The words that you made on the day of your wedding, I take you to be my wife. I promise to be true to you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. Whether you become fat or become thin, whether you have a job or jobless, whether you're drinking or whether you're abusive, whether you're a bad person or you're a criminal, you will still love your wife and your husband. Because that's the covenant that you made on your wedding day, and you will not go back on those words. Those words may hurt you today. Those words may hurt you today, but you will still love, because your love is sacrificial. Your love is not conditional. Note that your love is not conditional. Your love is sacrificial. You will love till it hurts. You will love till it hurts, and you will give without counting the cost. You will never measure your love. You will never count. You will never say, I did this for you. You will remain quiet and you will continue to love, because you love whatever it may be. Whatever it may be. Even if your spouse is not with you today, pray for your spouse wherever he or she may be. Pray and desire that union once again. Marriage is an inseparable and an intimate union designed by God. What God has united, no one must divide. First point, words of affirmation. Second is quality time. I want to ask you, after so many years of marriage, do you still make time for your spouse? In spite of all the busy things that you have, do you sit with your spouse? And have you asked your spouse, how was your day? Or how is your work going on? Or do we still take each other for granted? And it happens, we take each other for granted. We never ask. In the initial years of marriage, we were so concerned about each other. And after children and years of marriage, we've just taken each other for granted. Quality time, spend time with each other. Spend time, count the wrinkles on each other's faces. Tell the other person how the person has grown over the years. Tell the person the changes in the face that has happened over the years. The other person needs to know, the other person needs to see you closely. And people today wait for others for that word of appreciation, which doesn't come from our spouses. Appreciation has become very expensive, and we have no time for one another. Quality time. Third is receiving gifts. When you were quoting how joyfully and enthusiastically you wanted to give gifts to one another, and what has happened today? We have no time to buy gifts, forget about gifts. What does a gift symbolize? A gift symbolizes a thoughtful nature. You have been thoughtful about the other person. How big or small the gift is doesn't matter. What matters is the small gift that you give it to the other. It adds joy, it brings cheer. It makes the person feel good about the other person. When was the last time you actually genuinely bought a gift for your spouse? When was the last time you bought a gift for your spouse? You made time, you went somewhere else for that special gift. You made time and you gave it to your spouse. Or life is just going on monotonous. We are existing but not living. A marriage is existing but not happening. Fourth point, acts of service. Do you pitch in to your spouse when there are difficult things at home? Like my friend in college once, we after college used to wait and have a tiffin together and then would go for classes. And I would like to eat from his tiffin because his mother would always cook very well. And one day when we had, it was not that the regular stuff. So then he told me that his mother was not well and the father made the tiffin and sent for him. And she was telling us how his father got up early morning, he made the tiffin for him and he gave it to him and he used to prepare his sister, send them to school, and how his father was there in the absence of his mother. He reached out to his spouse, to his wife, acts of service, and women will always appreciate this. Spouses will appreciate your acts of service, absolutely done generously. You don't wait for the other to tell you to do this. You do it because you want to do it. You are responding, and that are acts of service. Ask yourselves, have you always waited for a spouse to tell you, or you have done things on your own because you want to do it? And the last point is physical touch. Do you touch your spouse? Do you touch your spouse? A touch matters a lot. A touch means a lot. Today people are waiting for that touch. And I tell people, don't wait, don't ask, don't wait for the other person to tell you. Touch, appreciate the other person, touch the other person's body. Ask your spouse when you touch the other, when you give a pat, when you hug, when you actually mean it, how much it means for the other person. It means a lot. You boost the other person, you lift the other person, your spirit is skyrocketed. And the rocket goes zoom, your spirit is upwards. It matters in marriages. My dear friends, I've been standing for a long time. I don't want to make you feel guilty, but I want to remind you, because it matters in marriages. As I said, familiarity breeds contempt. There is an attitude in us to forget these things. There's an attitude to forget these things. And Jesus vehemently opposes divorce. No annulment. Absolutely no annulment. The covenant that you've made is sacred. That covenant is not a contract. It doesn't come with a validity. It is forever, unlimited. My dear friends, the other youth who are here, pray for your parents. All of us are products of marriages. Pray for your parents very specially, dearly and tenderly. Lord, keep my parents always united together. Day before yesterday, I met a couple. Their children are in their 60s. They are still living separately. After so many years of marriage, what a tragedy. Apathy, absolutely. Their children are in their 60s. They are so old and they are living separately. Not happening. So sad. In the evening of their life, when they ought to be together, living life together, they are somewhere else. Let's close our eyes for a moment. Pray for your spouses, pray for your parents, that the gift